Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video. 1994 was definitely the year one man who is definitely a comedic, funny guy and such, and definitely right there next to some other funny guys like, say, Robin Williams, and, need I go on? Because I think you get the point. Yeah, because again, 1994 is where he really kicked off into high gear and such, with 3 films coming out in the same year, and that's like a record for this one guy who, in one of these 3 movies that came out in 94, and which, yep, you read the title and you know exactly which one it is that I'm reviewing, starring this funny, hilarious guy, and seeing as how it's celebrating its anniversary this year, and yep, couldn't have picked a perfect time to review this. That's right, from 1994, Jim Carrey in The Mask. Yes, The Mask. Based off of the comic books by the same name from Dark Horse Entertainment, being distributed by New Cinema Line, and even as of now, it's, part of the Warner Brothers family, but yeah, so, and New Cinema Line, the same company who would bring us, say, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise movie, series of movies, I should say, the first Ninja Turtles films that came out in the 90s, Austin Powers, etc. However, I'm not reviewing The Mask alone, because joining me is one of my good friends and who has seen The Mask and enjoys The Mask. Joining me reviewing The Mask is my good friend, Elijah Goring. It's good to have you for this, Elijah.
Thanks, man. It's been a pleasure. And you mentioned about, you mean New Line Cinema, exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, so little background before, each of us get into what our first thoughts are on The Mask, because, yeah, as I mentioned, New Cinema Line, because, short story, to keep it short and such, because, with The Mask comics themselves, because they started off in, the early, 80s, I want to say, and, New Cinema Line, who was making a big name of themselves with the Nightmare on Elm Street series of movies, and up until the third Nightmare on Elm Street film, because, they were really making progress with, the movies that they were making, and, they basically wanted another Freddy Krueger, and sure enough, and enter when developments and, plans for there to be a movie adaptation of The Mask happened, and New Cinema Line jumped in to, do a movie adaptation of The Mask, and sure enough, because it would go underway, it would go through some, changes, and I think, with directors, and until they did finally get a director for this, and who to play the main character and to wear the mask. And, because before The Mask came to be with filming, because already Jim Carrey had already done, say, Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber, which of course would come out the same year as The Mask. So New Cinema Line was already aware of Jim Carrey and these 2 movies that he's done, and at that time, he really wasn't that well known, but definitely, and as I said, because 94 was the year that kicked Jim Carrey into high gear, not just with Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber, but also, to top it off, The Mask. And sure enough, because Jim Carrey being cast, as the main character and whom wears the mask, and, hence the title of the film, and what Jim Carrey brought to the mask, and with his performance, and wearing that mask, that practical makeup, and with those dentures that he wears, and the fact that he can really, work with the makeup and such, and just like how he would years later when he would play and portray the Grinch in live action, it shows, because he's almost like a cartoon in real life, and how flexible he can be and with his facial expressions. And fun fact, because he was able to work with those fake teeth, because he wasn't supposed to wear them throughout the entire movie, but somehow, and lucky for Jim Carrey, he managed to work and speak with those fake teeth applied to his actual real teeth. But yeah, so now coming to our thoughts, our first thoughts on The Mask, and before I read the description slash the story, I'll start. Yeah, because The Mask, I really can't remember what my introduction to The Mask. I did not see The Mask at a very young age, but I think sometime, I want to say when probably it was Cartoon Network that showed The Mask. Maybe that was when I for the first time got to watch The Mask. Maybe I probably did watch it all the way through, but later on, because in the later years when I did watch The Mask, like on streaming, The Mask being free to watch on YouTube, etc. Yeah. And I've come to appreciate and like The Mask for what it is, and it's definitely, a 90s classic, and, featuring good old Jim Carrey, or should I say, starring good old Jim Carrey, with what the story had to offer, and, the fact that I learned that this was based off of a comic book from Dark Horse, the Dark Horse comics, not to mention Dark Horse Comics is also the home of Mystery Men and Hellboy, hence I'm wearing the shirt. Yeah, it's really cool. And, with, again, Jim Carrey, because it's good old, it's Jim Carrey. What more do I have to say? Because what he brought to The Mask is just fantastic. Okay, now we'll turn over to you, Elijah. What are the first things you have to say on The Mask?
That is a good question. When I first saw the movie, I thought it was intriguing, and I mean it was an interesting concept, but it was a big concept. But I didn't know New Line Cinema distributed this movie. Mm-hmm. I thought it was Columbia Pictures was going to distribute it, but New Line Cinema was. You're right. It had the same studios of the same company that they did Rush Hour movies and Dumb and Dumber. Well, I've been a fan of New Line Cinema ever since I was a kid. And getting back to this movie, it was a great concept. It's based on you're right. It's based on the books, the comic books, and also there's a TV series, the animated TV series, pretty much after the movie. Mm-hmm. And I thought Jim Carrey did a great job all the way through, and I didn't know Cameron Diaz was in this movie. When I first got involved with this movie, it was on ABC Family. I watched that movie like 3 times. It was like in the summer, and that movie never gets old. And it's funny that Jim Carrey had 2 movies in the same year: Dumb and Dumber and Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. And Jim Carrey is a comedic actor. And also a comedian, and he did The Living Color before this movie, 2 years before this movie. I'm not gonna lie, Jim Carrey, he's a funny dude, man. Mm-hmm. From the get-go.
Yep, absolutely, and perfect place to end it right there, because now, and as always, read the description / the story. When a timid bank clerk, Stanley Ipkiss, discovers a magical mask containing the spirit of the Norse god Loki, his entire life changes. While wearing the mask, Ipkiss becomes a supernatural playboy exoting charm.
Exhibit?
What's that now?
You mean exhibit or something like that?
No, exoting, like, it's
exoting.
Not... Yeah, okay, I think I did get that right. Exoting charm and confidence, which allows him to catch the eye of local nightclub singer Tina Carell. Unfortunately, under the mask's influence, Ipkiss also robs a bank, which angers junior crime lord Dorian Tyrell, whose goons get blamed for the heist. Yeah. So, all right. So the mask itself, because and fun fact, because mentioning of the Norse gods, because from what I heard, because there was a deleted opening, I want to say, like, where we would have seen Vikings out at sea, and which would explain how the mask in this chest, well, got sank down underwater, and eventually it would be discovered by a scuba diver, so there's that. Well, and not to mention, because the sequel to The Mask, where it thoroughly explains, and we get Loki as well as Odin, because Loki and Odin being mentioned and brought up in the first Mask film, and how we would get them in the sequel. So, So again, the mask being discovered by a scuba diver, well, close, because by discovering and trying to open a chest, yeah, because unfortunately something comes down on the scuba diver, and supposedly he probably got killed. But the mask coming out of the chest surfaces up the water, and, well, because we know later on that it's going to be discovered. And thus enter the main character of this film, Stanley Ipkiss, played by the one and only Jim Carrey. And basically, yeah, because the city in The Mask is called Edge City, and Ipkiss works at a bank account and such, at a bank company, and also because at one point, because he bought tickets, for a coworker of his, but then, she mentions to Ipkiss about a friend of hers coming into town and so on, and, unfortunately he only got 2 tickets, but he insists that, she should take her friend to this concert that he bought tickets for. Also, because we also have, his other coworker, Charlie Schummaker, if I'm saying the last name right, played by Richard Jenny. Charlie, giving, Ipkiss advice, talking about women and so on. And when at one point, a hot chick entering in the building, and that being Tina Carell. And, yep, Tina Carell being played by Cameron Diaz. And actually, The Mask was one of Cameron Diaz's first films that she did. She just got started, and, well, no doubt about it, because The Mask is where, it kicked her into high gear, just like Jim Carrey, so... So Tina trying to, set up an account at that bank, and, her turning over to Ipkiss, and her just, flirting with her and such, but little does Ipkiss know, as well as the bank itself, that, Tina is doing something because of the briefcase she has. It has a camera, and that's because, she is working for these gangsters, and the gangsters being led by their boss, Goring, being played by Peter Green. Now, I know I've seen Peter Green in other films. Have you seen him in any films that you've seen, Elijah?
No, not at all.
Okay, but I'm just saying because I know I've seen him before, and it's gonna drive me nuts because I recognize that face. I know I've seen him before. I'm just saying. And there are a few other faces who I've seen before, which until I mention them. So basically, Durain and his gangsters, them trying to get money and such, and they're hopefully gonna and especially for Durain, dispose this guy that they work for, their boss Nico, I think I might have gotten that right, played by Orsitis Matancina, if I'm even saying the full name right. Again, you know me sometimes, guys, but they're basically gonna dispose him, and to put it this, they want to get money, and hopefully they can take over the entire city. So yeah. So them trying to get the money, and, because at one point, Charlie invites Stanley to, something going on later this evening, which being this popular nightclub called Coco Bongo. So again, Charlie inviting Ipkiss over, and, because Ipkiss, he has to have a car, but he really doesn't have a car. The dude who works at a bank company, it's understandable sometimes for some employees, but, and he turns to, Ripley's auto shop, which I believe is though, because I think so, yeah, because The Mask clearly, parts of The Mask was shot in New York, especially the location and the building that was used for Ripley's auto shop, which being the firehouse, the Ghostbusters firehouse. I know and recognize the shape of that building and the inside of it. It's definitely the same building that's used for the Ghostbusters firehouse. So in this, it's, Ripley's auto shop, and, because him trying to get a car, and even in, mentioning that he just, wanted an oil change. And eventually, because he does get a car, and for what he's planning to do, going to the nightclub, and it's, Studebaker? Yeah, Studebaker. Thank you. Because, yeah, the Studebaker, which, by the way, it's the same styled Studebaker car that Fozzie Bear drives in the Muppet movie. It's true, so... okay, but we'll come to you, Elijah, because, like, anything you have to say and where I've come up to so far and what I've talked about?
It's funny, as you mentioned Cameron Diaz. I was in shock that she was in this movie. I think that was her first on-screen debut.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing her in the Shrek films and The Sweetest Thing with Christina Applegate.
And let's not forget Charlie's Angels.
Charlie's Angels series, which is another Columbia Pictures movie.
Yeah.
Columbia Pictures celebrating 100 years. And also, I never saw The Holiday, but I know she's in The Holiday with Jude Law, Kate Winslet, and Jack Black. And it's funny that Cameron Diaz teams up with Jim Carrey in this movie. And, I feel like Jim Carrey is like the Michael Jordan of Hollywood actor or something like that, as like a slam dunk on his income and his paycheck throughout his movies. And he's the highest paid actor in the world, I would say. And, I've never seen him in a movie like this, which is very funny and it's a family movie, but in a funny way. But I've never seen him in a very funny and erotic way in this film. And this film was very, very unique. And I would describe this as like a childhood movie in our days growing up. And when I first saw this movie, I thought, man, this movie it's at first I thought it was crap, but then it turned out funny and crazy and goofy at the same time. I thought it was like a Disney movie at some point, but it's not, in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's something similar to Flubber, I would say, that movie with Robin Williams. Rest in peace, Robin Williams, as I mentioned. I haven't seen Flubber for a very long time, but the movie was a fantastic movie. I'm happy for Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz's big movie, big Hollywood movie at some point.
Yep. Okay, and perfect place to stop right there, because about Flubber, because, well, like, Flubber and The Mask having some early CGI in the 90s, for one thing, so, but, so, with Stanley, because him meeting up with Charlie outside of the nightclub, Coco Bongo, but... Well, Charlie, and because, basically, even Charlie mentioned to Ipkiss that, it would be them and two chicks, and, they made their way in, but I guess, Charlie didn't realize that Stanley was still right behind him, and unfortunately didn't get to make it into, Coco Bongo. Yeah, and by the way, because I believe, because... One of the guys, I think, that probably works at Ripley's Auto Shop, Murray, I'm pretty sure. I hope I'm right, because, and Murray being played by, a young Blake Clark, and who would go on to be the future voice of Slinky Dog, in the Toy Story films. So again, Ipkiss, unfortunately, having trouble getting into, Coco Bongo, even fighting with, the guards outside, and one of them being Bobby the Bouncer, being played by Jeremy Roberts. Now, I've seen Jeremy Roberts in a couple of other films, like in Herbie Fully Loaded again, and he was also one of the Excelsior crew members in Star Trek 6, yeah. And by the way, because I am friends with him on Facebook, just thought I'd mention that. So, poor Ipkiss, not able to get into the Coco Bongo, even him being thrown out off the street and getting his clothes wet, and even when, Tina showing up, and Ipkiss trying to make a good impression on her, and, trying to deny that, the Studebaker that he drove in is not his, but, there's nothing really he can do, so it's the car that he drove, and, him driving back to his apartment, but unfortunately at one point the Studebaker, it breaks literally on a bridge, but then at one point, because, with his struggle trying to, get the Studebaker to start again, he thinks that out in the ocean, in the water, that there's someone out there, and he tries to save that person, but it wasn't a person. However, because it was all piled up and such. Like the mask was there, and he discovers the mask even when a policeman, put a light on him and saying, what are you doing down there? And I dropped my mask. I got it. And when he returns back to his apartment, because some, shoe marks that he leaves because, his shoes are wet. And I think, the landlord of that apartment building, Mrs. Peenman, being played by Nancy Fish, and she's quite a handful. You can immediately tell, and when we first see her, that what this woman is like, and just giving poor Ipkiss a hard time. And with Ipkiss going into his apartment, and we then get the introduction of Ipkiss's dog, Milo, the dog, being played by Max. So it's funny sometimes that, when dogs are in movies, they would have different names. So with the exception of Toto, because Toto and the Wizard of Oz was actually named Toto, but, what a coincidence that they cast a dog named Toto. So anyways, we also find out that, and turns out that Ipkiss, he loves cartoons, like, at his front desk at the bank, the bank building. He had a couple of Looney Tunes comics in his drawer at his desk, and at his apartment, he's got a couple of, like, Looney Tunes, like, portraits hanging on his walls, and has a couple of VHSs of Tex Avery cartoons, and one of the VHSs he pops in is, I can't remember the name of this one Tex Avery cartoon, but it's a wolf at a nightclub, and the wolf howling and so on. So Ipkiss, we see, because Ipkiss, he has a love for cartoons, and at one point, because he changes the channel, and then we see. Okay, where is he? Because, as always, I have YouTube. Yeah, here he is, Dr. Arthur Newman, being played by Ben Stein, because Dr. Arthur is being interviewed, and basically it's about masks, and, he's a doctor, and about masks, and masks are an important thing to wear and such, whatever, and however he says it. And this gives Ipkiss the idea of, maybe the same goes for this mask that he discovers. But little does he know at first about what this mask is, and it's unlike any other mask. And thus, him putting on the mask, and for the first time, we see him transform into what we see on screen, with him as the mask. And again, just the makeup and prosthetics put on Jim Carrey, for his mask form, just really good. And the CG and the visual effects, let's come to that now, because the CG and visual effects, especially on Jim Carrey and whenever he puts on the mask, or anybody else who puts on the mask, only 2 more characters wear the mask aside from Ipkiss. Well, the visual effects for 1994, and, ILM, short for Industrial Lights and Magic, them doing the visual effects for The Mask, pretty good. And not to mention, because this was they did this movie a year after they did Jurassic Park, and right when CG and visual effects were getting there and starting to look pretty good. Well, and not to mention this, the same year they did The Mask, they also did the Flintstones movie, and so the CG and visual effects that were done were pretty good, and, for The Mask, supposed to look cartoony, and the faces that the mask does, or, like, changing heads and so on, really good. But, okay, now we'll come back to you, Elijah. Anything you have to say where I'm at now?
Oh, man. I've been waiting for this. I want to say this for a while, man. I've been waiting.
Okay.
It's a unique movie, and I've never seen a movie like this before in my entire life. And you're right, I didn't know Flintstones came out the same year, but I saw that movie before.
Yep.
Interesting movie. And I'm not gonna lie, when you mentioned Jurassic Park, that was another classic movie right there. And I felt bad for Jim Carrey's character. At first, he was kind of like a loser.
Yeah.
That he's dealing with a lot of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Getting kicked out of the club and dealing with his crazy ass landlord.
Yep.
Landlord.
Best way to describe her. Yep.
Yeah, and another thing, man, when I was mentioning about that that clip, when I first saw it, I thought in my head, I was like, oh my god. I thought the mask was gonna eat him or possess him like a horror movie or something like that. But no,
No.
it just turned to like a regular dude,
Yep.
like a crazy dude, like a cartoony guy. Could do whatever he wants.
There you go.
And
There you go.
It's kind of like, I would describe this as that moment is kind of like a Looney Tunes moment or a Disney cartoon moment or something like that. Whenever I remember,
I don't mean to cut you off, but I really think that The Mask aims for that kind of like Tex Avery cartoon vibe and such.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, Jim Carrey literally killed it in this movie from start to finish. I never seen him in a movie like this before in my entire life. And what the crazy thing is it's a great concept,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not even a crappy movie. It's a fun movie. It could have been PG, but it's PG-13 instead because of that sexual references and sexual content. I don't know.
Adult jokes in The Mask that little kids would not get. So
and also violent content. And another reason why I don't care if it's PG-13 or rated PG. I was gonna say rated R, but it's not. But it's a family movie because it's a family movie because it's a unique film for the entire family. And speaking of this movie, I remember watching this movie on HBO at the time. Before I watched ABC Family, that was like 2013 or 12. I'm trying to remember. Oh, it was on HBO Family at the time. After I saw Mouse Hunt, like 2007. I remember this movie very well. This movie is one of my favorite movies, and the scenes are intense. I've never seen a movie like that before. It was crazy.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, okay. So all right. So continuing with the movie, because once he puts on the mask, because pardon my French, shit happens, and it's just all hell breaks loose, basically. And
I don't mean to cut you off, but I was gonna say that all hell breaks loose on Stanley Ipkiss, and crazy shit happens
yes.
throughout the movie.
Absolutely. Whenever the mask is put on Ipkiss or anybody else who puts on the mask. But yeah, so with Ipkiss, the first time he puts on the mask, because it doesn't take him too long to just go rambunctious and such. And one of his first witnesses is, the landlord, and, her trying to shoot him down with a gun, and even like caused to, broke a couple of holes by trying to smash a cartoony clock and such, and him basically, breaking out of the window and, wandering around the streets, and, coming face to face with a car and, blowing like a cartoony horn at that car driver and sending his hair like, sticking up. And then at one point, the mask coming face to face with a couple of thugs, and, what the mask does to one of them, like, I guess, like doing something to his nose and like stretching out his underwear and over his head, and, of course, causing him to chase them, and up to, one corner where then he puts on like an animal balloon show, like making animal balloons for them, like making one of a giraffe or like a dog. And by the way, because since this was brought up, adult jokes, one adult joke which I obviously no kid would get at first, including me, but later on, getting older and such, yeah. One thing that the mask pulls out, and pardon me for saying this, because he pulls out a condom, and like, oops, wrong pocket, so there you go. And then the final balloon that the mask makes is like a balloon gun, which then transforming it into an actual gun. It's a Tommy gun, and this sends the thugs, running away and, shooting off the Tommy gun. It's hilarious. And then the mask's business is not done quite yet, because he pops by at the Ripley's auto shop and, basically gives them what they deserve. Well, and because of what they did to poor Ipkiss by giving him that Studebaker, and what that led poor Ipkiss to happen to him at the Coco Bongo. So you wonder what the heck did he do to those two guys at the Ripley's Auto Shop. Well, we find out later on, because what happened that evening, the first time Ipkiss put on the mask, well, this caused attention and news reports, and we see at the auto shop, well, because the mask apparently spray painted the building. It even spray painted those two guys working at Ripley's auto shop, and this attracts the attention. And by the way, because they turn over to the apartment building, because it's where it began, and the landlord reporting about this, and Ipkiss is asked about if he knew anything about this, and Ipkiss finding an excuse and lying to the lieutenant of the police, Lieutenant Mitch Kellaway, being played by Peter Regard, if I'm saying the last name right. So Ipkiss making an excuse like having trouble hearing and such, and basically because lying to the lieutenant that he did not hear any of this gun firing, and with this guy in a mask that was present. So that's a relief for Ipkiss. Good thing he didn't get caught at first. But yeah, that, and for Lieutenant Mitch, because him being one of the other main characters, along with like his police buddy Doyle. Yeah, Doyle being played by Jim Duggan, if I'm saying the last name right. I recognize Jim. I think, yeah, he's the same guy who made an appearance at the beginning of Disney's The Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy. So yeah, I recognize him. So, and it's funny. The chemistry between Doyle and Mitch is pretty funny, because Doyle at times being kind of an idiot, and just Mitch, just like, shut up, Doyle, and just like, he knows what Doyle's like. So, and then later on, because, well, at one point, Ipkiss, he's late for work, and when he shows up, his boss he's confronted by his boss, but, assuring his boss that, it won't happen again. And then Ipkiss happens to meet and be interviewed by Peggy Brandt, being played by Amy Yasbeck. I think, yeah, I got that right, because Peggy is a reporter for the local daily news, I want to say, and turns out because they technically ran into each other a couple of years ago, because the best I can remember and describe is Ipkiss wrote a letter or something like that, and I think, yeah, this was something like that was out on the newspapers and stuff like that. So. And they, Ipkiss and Peggy, they seem to, hit it off pretty well, and, it looks like they seem like a perfect match, or so we think at first. Peggy even telling Ipkiss that what he wrote and what would be in the paper, because, he's not like any of those other guys in the city, and, he's perfect for any girl that's in search for a guy like him, so she says at first, and really not to give anything away. Okay, now coming back to you, Elijah, anything you gotta say, where I'm at now?
Yeah, after the craziness, I was in shock that Stanley didn't get fired.
Yeah.
Or get caught by the police. And, after or the mask crazy doing his, excuse my French, all this crazy ass shit. I thought he was fucked up at first, but
yeah,
no, he didn't get fired. But it's funny, man. It's just that character is chaotic. I would say in a funny way. I was like, I thought in my head, who is this guy? Is he from Disney or something, or Nickelodeon, or one of the Warner Brothers Looney Tunes cartoons or characters, something like that. But it's funny, man. I thought this is another thought. This is crazy. If I see the mask in my room, in New York City or in Brooklyn or in my neighborhood, I'll be recording that. I'll put it on YouTube, TikTok, even on Instagram or Facebook, and I'll be saying, this dude is crazy. This dude is in my block doing dumb shit, doing crazy shit. And I knew. And another thing, I would say, I knew that guy from somewhere. He seemed familiar. Oh shit! It is that mask guy, Ipkiss, right? Yeah, that is him. I'm gonna call the police. I would report to the police, man. I'm serious.
Uh-huh.
I would report to the cops, man. I thought, but yeah, I thought, man, it's crazy. I mean, I thought he got fired though, but thank God he didn't. He nearly this close to get fired or got arrested in jail. If he was the mask, he could have escaped at
Yeah.
some point. He
Mm-hmm.
could have escaped into prison or jail.
Absolutely. If he had the mask, yeah. Like, if he had the mask when he was thrown in jail, well, he would have easily gotten out of there, so...
You know it's in Kiss. You know it is. Trust me.
Yeah. And they think that, like, later on the police think that, maybe possibly Ipkiss has some involvement with this guy wearing a mask, so...
Right. I thought he was like a vigilante, I would say. He seemed like he's a vigilante at first.
Yeah.
And then back to normal to Ipkiss. This is weird. But now even a dog wearing a mask.
Yeah. And
I was cracking up for that.
yeah, and Durain, who wears the mask, but until I get to them and such,
I can't really. If anybody wear the mask, especially my family, I would be in shock. I would be in horror right now. I would be in shock and horror. I'd be like, oh my god. If I wear the mask, I'd be like, man, this is me.
right.
I look different. I would look different.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, because coming back to Peter Green, who plays Doran, because I quickly looked him up, like, further into IMDb. Okay, like, he was in another movie that came out the same year The Mask came out, another, big-time film in 1994 that he was in. He was Zed in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, right.
So,
I don't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, because I think I gotta go back and look, because, yeah, I know I did see him in Pulp Fiction and whom he plays, which means Zed, so yeah.
I heard that movie's one of the best movies of the year. Matter of fact, it's one of the best movies in the world right now.
Well, and one of Tarantino's top best films, one of his gems, for that matter. Okay, so, yeah, back to continuing on with The Mask, because, and to speed things up, because one sequence where Dorain is brought in and intimidated by, his boss, Nico, and because it's kind of interesting and fun to see when bad guys are confronted and intimidated by other bad guys. I'm not really sure, because I don't really think Nico is really established as a bad guy. Maybe kind of. I mean, I think, yeah, he is a big time gangster or whatever, and the guy running the big time city and such, so and it's funny, because, like, Dorain, because how he's getting tortured and being threatened and intimidated by Nico, because putting, like, that thing that you place golf balls on, and putting the golf ball on there, and when he swats the golf ball, well, kind of causes Dorain to bleed a bit, and yeah, with what he threatened Dorain with and such, and I think probably at one point, because he did get fired by Dorain, because I think, yeah, he no longer worked with Nico, and yeah, because again, like, Dorain, and along with the other gangsters that work with Dorain, like, some of them being Freeze and Freeze, and being played by Reg E. Cathy, and Sweet Eddie being played by Dennis Forrest. But yeah, so okay, and to speed things up still, because the next time that Ipkiss puts on the mask, well, because he did at one point try to throw the mask out the window, but then it came back into his apartment, because it's now become attached to Ipkiss, and, well, the purpose of the mask, being with Ipkiss, and a purpose that, happens later on in the film, because, yeah, and still to speed things up, because, the next time that Ipkiss puts on the mask, well, because what he's going to do, and going back, trying to get into the Coco Bongo this time, and by putting on the mask, because once he puts on the mask, then we see him in that, iconic, one iconic suit that he wears in the film, like the golden suit, the jacket, and so on, and with the hat, and, an iconic line from the mask, "Smokin'!" That. And so when he has the mask on, then the mask realizes that his pockets are empty, and thus he proceeds on his way to the bank and, grabbing some money. But just so happens that Durain's gangster members, his henchmen, are there, and they're planning to, steal the money, up until, the mask showing up, and, he beat them, and he easily got away from them. But, once he got away from them, then the police showed up, and, because there was a little bit of a gunfire, and unfortunately, one of the mob members, gangster members, I should say, Freeze, got severely wounded. And at the Coco Bongo, because the mask showing up in this long limbo vehicle and making a hot entrance and making his way into the Coco Bongo, distracting the guards, outside the front door, and by tossing a lot of money, and, him inside the Coco Bongo, and then, because Tina is there performing, and whenever we cut to the mask and just him goo-goo-eyeing over Tina, his jaw dropping, heart pumping, and heart beating, I should say, and howling like, the cartoon dog wolf that we see in the one Tex Avery cartoon. And up until when she's done performing, thus, the mask steps in, and then he makes things more entertaining and, making the music go fast. And and I gotta say, like, some of the songs in The Mask were pretty good. Like this one, which I wish I could remember the name of it, but if I remember, I'll put a text. So the other song that comes up later on, I remember it, and that's a pretty good one too. So so The Mask putting on a show and dancing with Tina, and when Durain, because he's there in the audience, but then he's informed to head upstairs because of what happened when his henchmen attempted to break in the bank, but they, the mask beat them, and Freeze, who, is severely wounded, because Durain offered him a cigarette, but unfortunately Freeze died. So, and this causes Durain to go on an outrage and, be very pissed off. And he's pointed out that, who it was that was responsible for them not getting at the bank and getting the money, and who it was that beat them to it, by pointing out that it was the mask, dancing with Tina, and, even Durain, he gets jealous when he sees that, he's dancing with, technically his girl, as, so he says, and, basically he orders his henchmen to go in to, clear out, the Coco Bongo, and to kill the mask, and once the performance is done, even when the mask gave Tina a kiss, and that sent her shoes flying, because she really liked it. And thus, the henchmen firing their guns, telling everybody to get out, and thus coming face to face with the mask. And, because luckily for Ipkiss, because he's wearing the mask, he can't die from, bullet gunshots, because even when he got hit, he doesn't get killed, and it's thanks to the power of the mask that he's wearing. And once again, just humorous moments that happened, when he's interacting and coming face to face with the bad guys, like that one part where he's wearing Western get up, and when he does get shot, acting like he's about to die, and tell Eddie M, and just and all that, frankly my dear, I don't give a damn, all that stuff he says. And even the one henchman that was holding on the mask, he kind of did get emotional a little bit, and then the mask, of course he's all right, and he gets a standing ovation, and he's given an award. And no doubt about it, because with the mask, there's a little bit of fourth wall breaking, and that is one of them, where we see this group of audience, like, you know, giving the mask a standing ovation, and because he's holding the award, yeah, it's pretty fun. Yeah, I know, it's hilarious, and that's our fourth wall breaking right there. So, okay, now let's come back to you, Elijah, because where we're at now, like, anything you've got to say?
Oh man, that scene that you mentioned about the club and the craziness and the shooting.
Yep.
I have never seen anything like that before. It was bro. It was wild.
And
that's crazy.
Yeah, and before that, because, you know, the intense dancing, you know, and from the mask.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, man. I never seen a scene like this before. It's like a lot of cartoon elements. And I thought to myself, this is crazy. Like, his heart is pounding, act like a German Shepherd, a crazy ass dog, you know, in love. And I think the reason why it's acting like that because Tina's sexuality and sexual references. I thought, oh my gosh, she's hot, smoking, and that line. As you mentioned, it was a very iconic line.
Yep.
I hear that line all the time.
Smoking.
And then,
yeah.
Smoking, baby.
Yep. All right. So continuing on with the film, because after what happened at the Coco Bongo, because, you know, once again, this getting the attention of the police, and not only does the mask have the police after him, but also Durain and his henchmen are also after the mask as well. And, well, because little do they know that it's Ipkiss that's under the mask and who is the mask. But what were you gonna what is it that you wanted to say, Elijah?
I was gonna say, you mean like gang members or homies? Because the henchmen's homies, man. The police is homies.
Yeah, that's another way to put at it. I mean, you know what it is that I'm trying to say, so yeah.
It's crazy, man. I mean, I didn't know if that guy kicked out, so many people would start shooting at this dude. And then I was like, when I had the guns, I'm like, oh shit, they strapped.
Yeah.
They got all the guns, man. They strapped. They never know. You never know what could happen, man. Get out of there.
Yep. So, all right, but anyway, so after what happened, and once again, because, you know, the Lieutenant Mitch, once again coming to Ipkiss's apartment, and, well, because after what happened, because, you know, Ipkiss waking up, and he can see and realize what had happened, even, like, in a closet of his, like, you know, has a lot of money, and, you know, trying to, you know, keep it together, and when the lieutenant steps in his apartment trying to, you know, find some investigation and evidence, and, you know, he's getting suspicious on Ipkiss if there's really any connection between this guy wearing this mask and, you know, with Ipkiss and so on. Even Milo, because at one point Milo was trying to go for Ipkiss's closet door and such, almost this close, breaking Ipkiss's cover. Blowing his cover, I should say. And to speed things up still, because once again, Ipkiss is late at the bank. Even at one point, he confronts his boss and so on. It was pretty funny. Also, some of the other characters that, I want to mention, because, like, there's also Irv, played by Tim Bagley, and there's Bert, played by Johnny Williams. There's also a police officer, played by Joseph Alfieri, if I'm saying that right, but yeah, so, and there's also, because I think this was the girl, like, the employee, like, co-employee, co-worker at the bank that, Ipkiss bought tickets for, Maggie, played by Jolie Fisher, so yeah, there's her. At one point, Tina shows up and, talks with Ipkiss, and asking him if he knows anything about what happened last night, and with this guy wearing a mask, and, well, because he privately talks with Tina, that saying that he knows this mask guy, saying that, he and this guy wearing the mask were college buddies. And Tina tells Ipkiss that, she, would like to see this mask guy again. And Stanley Ipkiss, tells Tina that he can arrange that for her and to let the mask guy know, but it's really him. Little does she know. And, meeting, they can meet at this park. And before that, because, Stanley, he turns over to, whom was on TV and, is all about masks, Dr. Arthur Newman, again, Bill Stein, and, with the help of Arthur, with the help of Dr. Arthur, and with getting evidence about the mask, that's where, because according to Dr. Arthur, the mask could possibly be related to the masks of the Nor gods, and tied directly to Loki. So there's our mentioning of Loki, and also Odin, and the fact because Odin had banished Loki, and which, by the way, because in the Marvel Comics, the Marvel Comics having their own version of Odin and Loki, and which we would see in the MCU and with Thor, etc., but this is the mask, and with their version of Loki and Odin and the Norse gods and so on. And at one point, Stanley shows Dr. Arthur a demonstration by putting on the mask, and thus, we know what we would expect. But it's not working, and turns out, and I think, because Stanley realizes, and with what Dr. Arthur said, it would only work at night by putting on that mask, and Dr. Arthur gives Stanley advice, because Stanley, he doesn't know whether he should be himself or wear the mask to meet with Tina. But with advice from Dr. Arthur, him telling Stanley that he should be both, and thus that's what he's going to do. And, Lieutenant Mitch on Ipkiss's tail, because he's keeping his eye on Stanley and thinking that probably he is the mask guy. So later that evening, because Stanley arriving and, meeting with Tina, but, she's really supposed to meet with the mask guy, but it's really Stanley. And a little, a touching moment between Stanley and Tina, and them looking out at at the stars and at nighttime of the city and such. And Stanley has to go, and him telling her that the mask guy will be here, and him going over a couple of bushes and putting on the mask, and thus the mask trying to make an impression on Tina, bonjour, Micherie, and so on. It's pretty funny. And then, of course, it doesn't take too long for Lieutenant Mitch and all the other police force to show up and, trying to arrest the mask, and which, they suspect, and which turns out that they are right, that it's Stanley Ipkiss. That's the mask guy. So them trying to arrest him and checking his pockets, and all they pull out of his pockets are just joke, gag items and such, cartoony stuff and so on. And up until when at one point, pulling out a picture of Lieutenant Mitch's wife. And he really gets outraged by this. And the mask making a break for it, and even closing up the gates to that park. And when he turns around, and he can see all other police force there, and another cartoony moment where his skull pops out in his eyeballs, him screaming. It's funny. And up to when, he pulls another trick out of his sleeves. Cuba Beat. This song was pretty good and very catchy, and rack chick chicky boom, chicky boom, that whole thing. But okay, now let's come up to you, Elijah, because anything else? Okay, what do you have to say now, and where I'm up to now?
As you're mentioning about the whole situation, I was in shock that the mask trying to be a stealth guy,
Yeah.
I thought, and the police, it's like a lot of police, and as the chief of police or the lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked when he said he was outraged about his taking a picture of his wife. I thought it was like porn or something like that, but it's not.
And
or the sexual thing.
And here's another thing. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm pretty sure because there was something written on the portrait of Lieutenant Mitch's the portrait of Lieutenant Mitch's wife, like maybe her phone number or something. I don't know, but something was written on that picture. So.
Oh my God, I've never seen that. I don't watch
how did you not notice it? Because it's so obvious. It's right there. It's written on the picture. So.
That is crazy. I cannot believe this man is beyond pissed off, and he's gone ballistic. I mean by ballistic, he went rogue. He gone crazy, like a crazy ass German Shepherd, like a crazy ass canine. Crazy ass canine.
Really? Because I wasn't getting any feeling and vibes of Lieutenant Mitch Calloway going rogue.
Like he's pissed. He wanted to get him away from that city. Or something like
well,
that.
I mean, all he was doing was just trying to cuff the Mask, which being Stanley Ipkiss, and throwing him in jail. That's all. So
that was crazy, though. Like that happened to what's that movie? The reference Ghost Rider with Nicolas Cage. He was in jail, and he became Ghost Rider, and then he escaped. That man escaped. He escaped. I'm not gonna lie, Mask escaped in jail.
Yeah, but he didn't have he didn't have the Mask with him when he escaped jail. So
he escaped. I thought, how the hell did he escape? Oh, his dog.
Yes, his dog Milo, with the help of his dog Milo.
That dog's smart. I give a lot of credit
Yeah,
to that little
absolutely. Stanley had raised and had trained a really good dog.
That dog's no joke. I cannot wait to see the action because the mask, the dog wearing that mask face. That dog's sneaky.
Mm-hmm. All right. So continuing on, and do you have anything to say on the Cuba Pete song number? That sequence with the Cuba Pete song.
I think so. Very interesting. Very interesting, though.
Okay, so that's all you guys say about that?
Yeah.
And it's catchy, don't you think?
It is catchy, but
I mean. I was just going to say, I don't mean to cut you off, I really hadn't brought this up, the songs, because I think maybe there were, 2 or 3 songs, I know probably there was a song after, during the credits, but, yeah, with the songs, with a few songs and the music, yeah, it's all really good in The Mask.
But I think it's a catchy song, but I think it added to the soundtrack, the movie's soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
I think. And,
yeah.
I'm not going to lie, the soundtrack was very catchy and sexy at the same time.
Yep, has that jazz vibe and such, so
that Cuban vibe I thought it's like a Spanish music or something like that. Very catchy.
with the Cuba Pete song, definitely with that, so
okay, continue to the movie.
Yes, so continuing, because, after the Cuba Pete song number and that sequence, the Mask able to, take control of the police force, making them dance and sing, but, not having an effect on Mitch, Lieutenant Mitch and Doyle, and, Mitch getting them to snap out of it and to chase after the Mask, and, when the Mask runs away, then at one point, hiding in a corner and ripping off the Mask, and he's back to his old Stanley Ipkiss self. And then at one point a car is showing up, and it's Peggy helping out Stanley, making a run for it, and they hide out in this warehouse because throughout the film, because Peggy trying to get a story and to be published on the front papers, and with her knowing about the whole thing of the Mask, and her realizing and finding out that it's Stanley Ipkiss that's the Mask guy, and there's a moment between them, and some sweet things that she says towards Stanley. But then it turns out, and out of nowhere, that she didn't really mean that stuff, and basically Stanley was set up. Peggy set him up, and basically, helped out Goring and, his gangster homies and such, as you best described, Elijah.
Right.
So yeah, so again, Stanley was set up. It was all a setup, because Peggy just needed the money, and because of her to pay off her rent, living in her flat and such. But at least and we see, because they did get their hands on the mask. Durain finally got his hands and possession of the mask, but like maybe they were going to turn him over to the police, but no, actually they were going to kill him in this warehouse they were in that provides the newspapers. But it was nice. Okay, at least it was nice for Peggy to say to Durain that you promised that you wouldn't kill him or anything like that. Okay, like she said to Stanley that him being a nice guy and such. So nice to see that there's a part of her that doesn't want want her to see him be killed and so on. And even right before Stanley's about to meet his demise, because Durain forcing Stanley to ask, to answer his questions of how does the mask work, and what Stanley can say, and it's simple, just by putting it on. And thus, Durain then puts on the mask, and it's like every time, whenever someone puts on the mask, there's always clouds and thunder and lightning, and because the mask being very powerful and where it comes from, that's understandable. So when Durain, he puts on the mask, let me tell you, because when Durain has the mask on, it makes him look scary looking, and with the deep voice that he has, and sometimes his eyes are glowing red. Well, that's a nice attention to detail there, because someone else putting on the mask and they would look different. How they would look still green, a green face, but still have a different look to it. Do you have anything to say on that, Elijah?
Oh gosh, it's terrifying when enemies wear it.
Yeah.
When the civilians wear it in a good way. For me, for example, I'll be normal, cool kid and stuff like that. I'll be the same powers as him, as Stanley. Not too crazy, but running away, the sequence, the escaping, crazy stuff,
Yeah. So
yeah,
and also because those I want to say of a few black lines or tattoo marks or something on Durain's face when he has the mask on. Just I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but yeah, that's cool too. Again, nice attention to detail. Whenever someone puts on the mask, it would look different. The facial look and such whenever having the mask on, still green, but yeah, you get my point. So now Durain has his possession and has the mask in his hands and on his face. And because what they do next with Stanley is throw him to the police, because they know they're searching for Stanley Ipkiss, and now because they had him tied up and his mouth taped and shut, because at one point at the police station they drop off Stanley Ipkiss, and thus he's thrown in jail. So yep. So, and what happens next is, because at one point while Stanley is in jail, he is paid a visit by Tina, and by this point, Tina, she's really has had enough with working alongside with Durain, and she now has she's been redeemed and such, and especially since she had fallen in love with the mask guy, and of course she finds out, and Stanley confirms this to her, that it's him who's the mask guy wearing the mask and so on. So yeah, now she knows. And some sweet things that she says to Stanley, and and I think it's obvious, because thanks to Stanley, he helped make Tina a better person. And another important thing, because having her realize that to someone else she's not someone to be used for clubs and stuff like that, what I'm talking about. So yeah, because and that being Stanley, because treating her like an actual person and, you know, caring for her and stuff like that. Unlike, say, Doreen's, yeah. You know, and she even tells Stanley that she's gonna run away, and I think, yeah, she even, like, established to Stanley that, you know, she'll return and possibly help him get out of jail and such. So, yeah, saying goodbye for now, and when she leaves the jail, little does she know and realize that a couple of Doreen's goons are following her, and thus, yeah, bringing her into Doreen, because, you know, obviously, him knowing her connections with Stanley and him being jealous and such, well, she really wasn't your girl in the first place, and how far this was going with what you were doing, Doreen. So, and back at the jail, because, well, at one point, because Doreen's goons searched Ipkiss's apartment, Milo was still there, and he did follow them. He followed them, and up to when, yeah, at the jail, and, you know, Stanley discovering and hearing Milo's barks. And a little bit of a sad moment because, you know, because at that time, and when he was in the jail for a little while, because, you know, he thought that, well, because there was no way he was going to get out. He was done for, and being in that jail, going to be in that jail for quite a while, and telling Milo to, you know, better go to another family and such. But nope, Milo, he's not doing that. He is staying with his owner, his master and such. And even when, you know, at one point, Stanley did overhear Tina being captured by Doreen's goons, even trying to inform a policeman about this, but, you know, he's too tired and sleepy, and he's like, you know, yeah, whatever, just, you know, sometimes policemen in movies, like, they can be stupid. Like, you know what I'm saying, right, Elijah?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
They can be retarded at times, you know. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Like I said, and some cops can be smart. Some cops are stupid, especially the goofy ones. You know, sometimes they get themselves killed
in
or
movies,
tortured, you know, and stuff like that.
As I said, most notably police in movies. So
right, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
something like that. You know,
no offense to police in reality. So, you know.
Yeah, I agree. No offense. And I was saying again, I'm gonna say this again. I messed up myself. I was gonna say sometimes some cops can be stupid. Some cops can be smart.
Exactly.
Especially the goofy. I'm gonna cut you up again. Especially the goofy ones, you know, from getting themselves hurt or killed or even worse or tortured.
Mm-hmm. And you weren't really cutting me off. I was agreeing with you. So.
Oh, okay. Especially detectives are very smart, and sometimes they can be like angry, mostly outsmarting themselves for this bad guy, and figure out who did this. It's like a connection. Like, say, like how Olaf did the crimes, and they caught him. The cops got him.
Oh yeah.
The detectives got him.
Oh yeah. Yep. I mean, not just the cops, but everybody else, like, in that town, just all, you know, confronting Count Olaf. But anyways, so continuing on with the mask. So with Doreen now having possession of the mask and, you know, having Tina by his side, well, he's basically now is the time for him, his chance and goal with what he's gonna do. Him and his goons are gonna do. They're basically gonna go to the Coco Bongo, and they're going to execute and kill, the ex-boss of Doreen, Nico, because, they're going to execute him, and they're basically going to blow up the Coco Bongo. But even like Doreen mentioned the charity ball. Okay, yeah, so and back at the jail, because Stanley trying to find a way to get out of jail and to help Tina and to stop Doreen, well, because with the help of his dog Milo, just encouraging him to jump. And that's another thing I almost forgot to mention, because early on in the film, he mentioned and said to Milo, like, not to jump on people or something like that. But, this time, he tells Milo to forget that and to really jump. And at one point, he does jump, and Stanley catches him, and telling Milo to get the keys from that one policeman who's asleep, and even at one point, Milo went for a piece of cheese, and Stanley telling him, "No, no, put the cheese down, get the keys," and that thus Milo does so, and yep, unlocking his cell. He, him planning to get out of there. Even at one point, he tried to go for the policeman's gun, but the policeman woke up, but. Thankfully, and successfully, Stanley knocked him out. So he has the gun, and then he came face to face with Lieutenant Mitch, and now he has the gun pointed at Mitch, and basically tells Mitch to listen to him, and he has Mitch handcuff him to him as well, but have him handcuffed to both of them, and them making their way out of the jail building, and fooling everybody else at the jail as well as Doyle, and basically they're going to make their way to the Coco Bongo, and to for Stanley to stop Durain and to save Tina. So them proceeding on, and at the Coco Bongo, because when they do show up, well, because Durain, wearing the mask, confronting his old boss, and thus him and his goons, firing upon Nico and his other workers, goons and such. And, well, when Nico is trying to fire and kill Durain, well, he can't kill him because, well, by wearing the mask. And basically Durain, with the masks, swallows, well, and, brings the bullets to his mouth and starts shooting them from his mouth and killing his ex-boss. So, yeah, Nico's done for. So now Durain has control over the Coco Bongo, but, well, because he's about to blow it up, and even placing the bomb next to Tina, because having Tina be tied up. But sure enough, because Stanley, along with Lieutenant Mitch and Stanley's dog, Milo, showing up, and it was pretty funny because Milo was licking the heck out of, licking Lieutenant Mitch to death, and, Stanley, tells Mitch that he probably loves you, so and by the way, speaking of Milo, because there was one sequence, I can't believe I almost forgot to mention this. There was one sequence where Stanley was having a dream, and dreaming over, how he's being, making a move on Tina, being cool and such, smoking a cigar, and then, they're about to, go for a kiss, but then, out of nowhere, because you don't realize at first that he's dreaming, because then out of nowhere, Tina starts to lick on the side of Stanley's head, and it turns out that, well, he was dreaming, and he woke up to Milo licking him. So yeah, okay. But coming to you, Elijah. Now coming to you again, because anything you've got to say where I'm at now. So
it's crazy. When I was listening to your situation, your sequence, it's crazy that I've never seen it. Well,
sequence that happened in the movie itself. So
yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. It's everything is just crazy, man.
Yeah.
Why'd you blow up your own bar? Why'd you blow up your own club that people pay your money? That's the dumbest thing.
Well, I mean, it wasn't really Durain's club. I mean, it was really his ex-boss's club. He, him running that place, and thus, him taking revenge on his ex-boss, and by executing and killing him, and thus blowing it up. So,
that sounds like a terrorist attack, I would describe.
I mean, they're not really terrorists, but they're just gangsters, because this being a comic book movie adaptation, and in comic books like The Mask or Dick Tracy having gangsters. So there you go.
Oh, you mean thugs at the same point.
Thugs, yeah. Another way to describe them, thugs, yeah. Gangsters / thugs.
Or mafia, maybe. Or mafia.
Yeah. Depending on that.
And the thing is, I never saw Dick Tracy, though. Never. I heard about it. Never saw it.
As we do our review of The Mask, you have not seen Dick Tracy, so.
No, man, never saw it. I heard that movie. I heard it was a Disney movie. I thought it was a Touchstone movie.
Touchstone, that's correct, so.
Oh, that's Touchstone. That was Disney.
Well, Touchstone being a part of Disney, because Disney, releasing movies under the Touchstone logo, so.
A division of Disney.
Yeah.
And Hollywood Pictures was the same division. Mostly it's like a grown-up adult division because they put R-rated movies.
There you go.
Mostly.
There you go.
Same thing as Miramax. Cause
Miramax is another one too, yeah.
Because Miramax left Disney because... No, Miramax, well, the Weinstein brothers left Miramax because they have their own company and Dimension is part of it in that same division.
Yeah.
And Disney, well, Miramax still been with Buena Vista / Disney since 2010, since Lionsgate by the rights. And now Paramount's taking over as we speak.
Yeah. All right. But coming back to The Mask, because, again, by this point, Stanley, Lieutenant Mitch, and Milo have arrived, and, well, Stanley going in, and, he's, hoping he'll do this himself, but, he does discover and see that his co-worker and friend Charlie is there, and even when he was making his way into the building, right as he was walking his way into the building, because Lieutenant Mitch making a comment that, saying he's a dead man, or so you think, because of what happens next. So even like Stanley had Mitch have the radio, so in case, call for backup and such. So by going in and, he gets the attention of Charlie to sneak over, and, he gives Charlie a gun and, tells him to, in case, bring in backup as well, the police and so on. So Stanley successfully taking out a couple of the goons, because, him coming face-to-face with Doraine, but unfortunately because they have Stanley at gunpoint and held hostage, and Tina has an idea and to trick Doraine, telling Doraine, and before she's about to die because of the bomb and the explosion, she tells Doraine and, asks him to kiss her, but not to kiss her with the mask, the Doraine that she knows. Yeah, by him taking off the mask, even, Doraine's goons telling him that there's no time and that, it's gonna blow up in a couple of minutes, but Doraine just there's still time and such, and thus taking off the mask and smooching with Tina, but what Tina's doing is, lifting her heels and, legs out of the rope that's tied around her feet and such, and basically kicking the mask out of Doraine's hand, and, hopefully Stanley can catch it, but unfortunately he doesn't. However, Milo making his way into the building, because we did see at one point Milo opening the back car door, and, Lieutenant Mitch witnessing this, and, even he can't deny, and he witnesses seeing that, well, Milo is a smart dog, and complimenting on Milo, and rightfully so. So, Milo making his way, and to help out his human owner, and, well, because at one point, yes, the moment has come, because, well, Milo having the mask in his, mouth, and even one of, Doraine's goons trying to, a couple of Doraine's goons trying to stop Milo, but, of course, in the end, Milo, because the mask is now on him, and this is where we see a dog, and which being Milo, wearing the mask, and obviously, yeah, Doraine's goons are screwed to, come face-to-face with a dog wearing that mask. And, of course, Milo wearing the mask, taking on a couple of Doraine's goons, biting one of them on the butt and so on. But, yeah, and let's come to you, Elijah, because I know you'll want to say more on that moment when Milo has the mask on.
It's a lot of action packed going on that I'm listening. I read the mask, I feel like, I think that dog is straight up a gangster, I would say. That dog's a G. When that dog was wearing the mask, I thought it's kind of like Looney Tunes,
Yeah, but at the same time, Milo being a good boy and, taking on and attacking the bad guys, so.
That dog, no. I would say I could describe when Milo the dog wear that mask, I thought to myself, that dog is like a gangster. That dog's like
in a good way, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. In a good way, saving his owner.
Uh-huh.
It's crazy shit going on, and I thought. No, I said I thought already, but I thought it's kind of I thought he's like Tom and Jerry reference, and I thought this is a crazy situation. I've never seen anything like that before for a dog. For a dog wearing a mask, an animal wearing a mask. If I see any animals wearing a mask, like a German Shepherd, in a good way,
Yeah.
protecting some citizens, from old lady across the street from an ongoing truck, or kids being nearly killed, or bad guys trying to kill kids or parents or anything, or torture or do anything necessary to possibly that they could kill family members and stuff like that. And the dog come over and just fight back and bite his ass, And I was in shock that they'll bite the enemy's but the goon's ass.
Yeah.
Like an ordinary dog, he's like a canine. He's like a good canine. The canine version of the mask, baby.
Yes.
That was funny what I said. The canine version of the mask. I wonder if there was a spinoff of that movie though, or a cartoon. That'd be cool to see a dog version of the mask, or a canine version of the mask, or even an animal, or even a kid version of that, or even civilian version. That would be cool if New Line Cinema or New Line in general will do that, or Warner Brothers will reboot it.
Yep. Okay. And maybe by the time you're, watching this again, our review of The Mask, they might have done that. But anyway, so continuing on, because, finishing the climax in the nightclub, because, again, Milo wearing the mask for a little bit, and then, because the mask coming off Milo, and, because even when Stanley, without wearing the mask, taking on Durain, and successfully a couple of times, punching Durain until, final knockout, and he's, knocked out for a little bit, and then, Stanley trying to, catch and put on the mask, and thus he is wearing the mask again, and, because, he'll easily take care of the rest of Durain's goons, so that's what he does. So even, them firing on Stanley wearing the mask, but, of course he can't die and get shot, get killed by the bullets, because even when he drinks something, the liquid comes out of the holes that were shot of him, but of course he's all right, and, again, he successfully takes out the rest of Durain's goons and saves Tina's life, and obviously, because with him wearing the mask, and doing this in a cartoony way, swallowing the bomb, and it blows up in his stomach, and even burping out a little bit of flames, and thus, he saves Tina, but for Durain, he's not quite finished yet, because him pulling out a knife, and, he was once again trying to go after Stanley, but by this point, he's no match for Stanley wearing the mask. And because they had this, little, pool or something in the nightclub, because the mask, basically makes, a chain or something, like a toilet or whatever, and basically flushing Durain down the drain. And that's it for Durain. He's done for, so... and thus, the police coming in, thanks to Charlie, all of Durain's goons are arrested. Even, yet again, Lieutenant Mitch, he was trying to, once again, try to arrest Stanley, but thankfully, the mayor is there. I almost forgot to mention the mayor. Mayor Tilton, being played by Ivory Ocean. I'm pretty sure I got the first name right. Because the mayor was there early on at the nightclub before Durain showed up. But so the mayor telling the lieutenant not to arrest Stanley because, he's the hero. But, Mitch trying to tell him that, he's the mask guy. But the mayor telling him that, no, it was Durain. Maybe... I would assume that maybe the mayor didn't realize that Stanley was the masked guy, but, because he and the others, they witnessed and saw Durain wearing the mask. Even, Mitch pointing out at the dog carrying the mask, and the mayor telling the lieutenant, do not touch that dog, and, I want to see you in my office tomorrow, etc. And another funny moment, one last funny moment between Mitch and Doyle, and it was pretty funny, and, shut up, Doyle, and, what can the lieutenant do now? Because now Stanley is the hero, and there's nothing he can do to arrest Stanley, and, He really can't deny that, well, Stanley, he did save the day. And the last sequence as well, we see Stanley, Tina, Charlie, and Milo. They're at the bridge, and what's happening is that, well, Stanley is planning to dispose and get rid of the mask, throwing it out in the ocean. But he asks and turns to Tina, like, if she would prefer him with the mask and such, but no, she throws it for him. She prefers just himself. And finally, they do go for a kiss, and Milo, tilting his head. And for Charlie, well, he tries to get his hands on the mask by jumping in the water. And even when he lands in the water, well, Milo apparently beat Charlie, because now Milo has the mask in his mouth once again, and Charlie trying to chase after Milo. And well, yeah, all ends well for good old Stanley. He did get the girl in the end, which being Tina, and yeah, it was a good way to end The Mask. And anything you've got to say, like, of the ending of The Mask?
I thought the ending was very touching, but it's funny at the same time.
Oh yeah.
But it's a really, I ain't gonna lie, it was a good movie though. It was a funny movie. It had moments. It had mischief moments.
Yeah.
I mean,
and to stop you right there, because yeah, our final thoughts and results on The Mask. Yeah, The Mask is a 90s classic, and especially one of Jim Carrey's top gem movies, without a doubt. The story was pretty good, the characters, the visual effects, the funny and emotional moments were good too, the music and the songs, and the action sequences. Yeah, just everything about The Mask was really good. I enjoyed it, and yeah, we'll come to you, Elijah, because what you were saying, and if there's anything else you got left to say about, your final results and thoughts on The Mask.
My final result, from what I'm gonna say, and also my thoughts plus two. I thought the movie was really great. I mean, really good.
Uh-huh.
It was a really good movie, but it was like fun, hilarious, and action-packed, action comedy. I've never seen a movie like this before. It's kind of like Flubber in a unique way. Well, Flubber's like this. I think it's the same CGI of Flubber, but
well, I mean, because I don't mean to cut you off, because obviously, and I think so, yeah, because Industrial Light and Magic, short, and ILM for short, because them doing the visual effects and such for The Mask, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, they did the CG and visual effects for Flubber, so yeah.
And also they did they did Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events too, in that same company.
Yep.
Light and Magic. And like I was saying about my thoughts and my sayings, I'm gonna say it again. I thought the movie was pretty good, but I really enjoyed it. I loved it. It was a good concept. Mm-hmm. Actually, matter of fact, it was a great concept, but it was a good concept at the same time. But it was an interesting concept that people don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's kind of like Flubber in an action in a hilarious way, but this is an action comedy. Mm-hmm. It's an action-packed comedy with cartoon elements and the cartoon references and the sexual references.
And another way to put I don't mean to cut you off again, but another way to put at it, the adult jokes in The Mask that kids don't get.
What I was saying, man. I've never seen a movie like this before, which is very, very unique. And I feel like this movie was like a hidden gem to me. And, it's part of my childhood movie, though, man, as a matter of fact. I think I saw this movie on HBO back in 2007 or 2010, or one of those years. No, it was 2010. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And I remember watching on ABC Family twice I recorded that movie 3 times. I saw this movie 4 times actually on ABC Family when I recorded on cable, and it was like in the summer or in the fall.
Right.
And that movie is one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's one of the best Jim Carrey movies ever since. And it's funny. I know, as I mentioned, the movie came out the same year as Dumb and Dumber, and Ace Ventura. And Jim Carrey got a lot of movies in this list, and his movies was like a smash hits. It becomes a matter of fact. In fact, that his movies was like a blockbuster smash hit. And Jim Carrey making a lot of money, man, because Jim Carrey is one of my favorite actors of all time. And even my mother loves Jim Carrey at some point, you know. And I'm not gonna lie, the Mask is a straight up classic.
Yep.
100%.
Okay, so, and before we rate The Mask, just a very quick mention, because I knew I wanted to bring this up, and yeah, just a very quick mentioning about this, because I'm sure you know about this too, Elijah, because are you familiar with this whole thing that happened with, like, The Mask? There was this Nintendo Power contest for, you know, what was, like, when there were plans for there to be a sequel to The Mask. Do you know about that story?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No idea.
Okay, but to keep it short and such, because with the success of the first Mask film, because it didn't, because it didn't take too long for New Cinema Line to begin plans to do a sequel to The Mask, and hopefully, because Jim Carrey would return to his role as Stanley Ipkiss, and and also The Mask, and possibly Cameron Diaz and so on. In fact, because as I mentioned, Nintendo did a contest. Whoever would win the contest would receive prizes, like would receive a Mask jacket, and would receive a phone call from, at the time, the voice of Princess Peach, Leslie Swan, and would receive a cameo in the planned Mask sequel. But unfortunately, because later on it seemed like plans for a sequel to The Mask was not going to happen, and Jim Carrey, he was not too fond of the idea of doing a sequel to The Mask, and this is especially, I think, around that time when, how badly the Ace Ventura sequel was receiving, and it was because of that Jim Carrey doubted of doing a sequel to a movie that he had done, and Ace Ventura being that example. And so the winner of that contest was contacted by Nintendo and was informed that a planned sequel to The Mask was not happening anytime soon, and he was given two options. Option one, he would if the winner would like to, he can wait until hopefully the Mask 2 would happen and he can still have a cameo in it. Or option two, he would receive a paycheck for like $1,000 and such, and thus the winner went with the $1,000 paycheck. And even the winner of that contest revealed himself on YouTube in 2014. I'll put his name in the text, but there's your story on this Nintendo Power contest, and for what was going to be a planned Mask sequel.
And then another thing, as you mentioned, you keep saying New Cinema Line. It's New Line Cinema, by the way. I was going to correct you.
I'm just like, it's like I'm saying it, I said it backwards. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you mean, because I know, about that studio, man. I grew up watching New Line Cinema movies. Well, they did good movies, though. I'm not going to lie. I like Lord of the Rings and the Rush Hour movies. And it's funny that the same studio came out. I think they did a sequel, but with Jamie Kennedy and Alan Cumming. I watched that movie before. It was kind of all right. As a kid watching that movie, it was funny, but the first movie was better than the sequel. I thought the sequel was pretty good, but it turned out a disaster. Yeah. And I thought, man,
and that's Son of the Mask is another story. So
I'd rather stick to the original movie, man. It's just I just haven't seen this movie for a very long time. It's been 10 years I saw this movie. Yeah. It's been like years. I saw this movie when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and that movie never gets old. And I feel like once I'm in the mood to watch it, I thought I need to watch this movie. It's in my head. I gotta watch this movie. The movie calling my name. My sisters love that movie too. Right. It's crazy.
Okay. I don't mean to cut you off, but now let's come to where how we rate The Mask. So we'll start with you, Elijah. How many stars do you give The Mask, and how do you rate it?
Oh God. I would say the movie, I would give it 10 out of 10. I would say 5 stars. And two thumbs up, and it was a fun movie to watch. As a kid watching it, it was a fun movie as a kid, but as an adult or a teenager, it's like, oh, it's the same thing. Great, but it's a great movie and a classic. And Jim Carrey classic, by the way.
Right. Okay, so that's how you rate it and such. And for me, yeah, I mean, it's on my mind, and yeah, it's about right. I'm giving The Mask, 8 out of 10 stars. Yes, for me, 8 out of 10 stars for The Mask. And for Elijah, because, well, yeah, I mean, he said 10 out of 10, 5 stars, and 2 thumbs up. And yeah, me too, I give The Mask 2 thumbs up, way up, yeah, because, again, this being, as I said, The Mask being one of Jim Carrey's gems of movies that he was in, this being a 90s classic, and again, this, Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, all 3 movies coming out in the same year is what made Jim Carrey go big time and become a big name and such, and with, future movies that he would do, and not long after doing those 3 movies, a year later, because we all know he would play the Riddler in Batman Forever. But later on in his career, because, well, he would go on to do, say, The Grinch, Count Olaf, and most notably, Robotnik. So, that's our review of The Mask. And yeah, what about you guys? What do you think of The Mask itself? Did you grow up watching it? Any of you that grew up in the 90s, saw The Mask, and, is it one of your favorite 90s movies, one of your favorite Jim Carrey movies? What'd you think of, which is your favorite moment in The Mask, from the funny moments and with the characters and with what Jim Carrey brought to the film itself? Everything that me and Elijah had to say about The Mask and with our review. And yeah, what did you think of our review? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. And Elijah, any last words to say?
I would say, man, if you watch The Mask, I highly recommend it. It's a fun movie to watch, especially for the kids, for the entire family. Well, as far as I go, I feel like this movie was a coincidence in a great way, but I didn't expect this movie to be funny in a cartoon way, in a funny-ass way. But this movie is just incredibly funny and action-packed and hilarious at the same time. Well, it's an action comedy. Trust me, if you watch this movie, you'll like it, you'll love it, or you don't like it. That's up to you. Just when you get a chance to watch The Mask, I highly recommend it. It's worth watching it.
Well said, well said. And yeah, and what you said, yeah, because it depends on, whoever watches The Mask for the first time and their opinion on The Mask. That's what's important. So, and for me, because, thank you guys very much. Thank you very much for watching me and Elijah's review of The Mask. More review videos are on the way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and we'll see you guys in the next video /review. And Elijah, of course, he'll be back, doing more review collabs with me, especially since, well, we'll be reviewing a couple of other, films that Jim Carrey did. Just, stay tuned for those. And stay tuned later tonight because the next film that I'll be reviewing with another friend of mine, well, it's something else, comic book movie related, a comic book movie adaptation, this time from Marvel. And let's just say, well, it's the sequel to everybody's favorite anti-fourth wall breaking Marvel character and, well, shares a lot in common with The Mask. So stay tuned for that. And Elijah, say goodbye.
Well, it's been a pleasure, but thank you for having me. Anytime I'll come to your collaborations for any movie, for some movies. But thank you for having me.
Anytime. My pleasure, my friend. And for me, again, thank you for watching. Take care, and peace out. Smokin'!